Joined now on the Mattress Warehouse Hotline by Ian Hartitz from Pro Football Focus, who now has the Fantasy Guide live on Pro Football Focus with all of the rankings and everything. Good morning, Ian.
Good morning, guys. Appreciate you having me on. Draft Guide is live, so make sure everyone out there, go get that before draft's coming out in August. This is our last time to really jam before things get real.
Right.
You guys might have ruffled some feathers, a couple days ago with your post at PFF on Twitter. Terry McLaurin is the best wide receiver in the NFC East. That's going to upset a lot of Amari Cooper truthers in Dallas. Tell us why you have McLaurin on the top of the heap in the NFC East.
I mean, look, you kind of go around the NFC East, and with all respect to Cooper, maybe it is a little bit weaker in terms of the alpha number one wide receivers in some other divisions, but I don't want to take anything away from Terry McLaurin because truly last year, I mean, if you're only going off of the 14 games we had from McLaurin in 2019, I think he probably does deserve to be at the top of that. I mean, just the things we saw him do as a route runner in legit matchups, against Darius Slay, Byron Jones early on in the season, turning around just all pros. And I think, if anyone that watched a couple Washington games, obviously he wasn't getting league best quarterback play. I mean, it was such an absurd storyline to start the season because McLaurin just went absolutely nuts with Case Keenum under center. And then Haskins comes in, not the greatest situation with Bill Callahan taking over and that stuff. And, McLaurin doesn't quite put up the same numbers for a few weeks. And we had this, storyline going that he couldn't do anything with Haskins. Case Keenum was the McLaurin whisperer. But then what happened at the end of the season? We saw McLaurin go 4 catches, 57 yards, 1 touchdown, 130 yards, and another touchdown. And end of the season, 7 catches, 86 yards, and 0 touchdowns, all with Dwayne Haskins under center. I mean, just the amount of separation he was able to create almost at a moment's notice proved he could do it with, 2 QBs that I don't think anyone would mistake for average quarterbacks at this point. Going into 2020, there's no real differences in this passing game in terms of just, alpha targets that are really going to take his role. I mean, we've already seen greatness from Terry McLaurin. I think the best is still yet to come.
What are your expectations for any of the running backs on the Redskins?
Oh, my gosh, all 20 of them or something?
Right.
Oh, my gosh, guys. And look, nothing against any of these Darius guys, the amount of highlights this guy has for a dude with under 50 career touches is just madness. But I just don't know if we can really expect this big fantasy role for him. I mean, last year when he did get healthy, even when he was having, that massive game against the Panthers and making some good run against the Jets and otherwise, Adrian Peterson was pretty much on the field just as much. And, we've seen AP over these years. Now we had that brief Saints experiment that turned sour pretty fast. I mean, I don't think he would be in Washington this year if he didn't have some sort of guarantee on getting the rock. And, you look beyond that, Bryce Love should be healthy this year. They felt the need to sign Peyton Barber. I've heard J.D. McKissick murmurs here and there. The one guy that really excites me, though, is, your second-round rookie running back, Antonio Gibson. And, I'd be interested to hear if you guys have any kind of insider info on his role because, coming out of once he got drafted, it seemed like we were kind of hearing more 2 RB sets. He'll find his way in. But, I know he was mostly a receiver on Memphis. He definitely had a gaudy, yards per carry total, too, and he did his thing as a running back. But I was hoping for more of a wide receiver role with a little bit of running back carry usage mixed in because the wide receiver core is just so wide open. So maybe Antonio Gibson, if he can get, kind of a true Percy Harvin hybrid-esque role, could make some fantasy noise in that backfield. But otherwise, it's just so muddled.
All right, so let's talk about the top of the first round, Ian. I'm guessing you're not pro quarterback, like a standard league. We were actually talking about it last segment. Mahomes obviously would put up huge numbers. If it's a 4-point passing touchdown league, then you obviously want to kind of devalue that a little bit. But what if it's a 6-point touchdown league? What kind of value to put on Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, who obviously had a huge year last year? Where would you put those? Where do you slot those guys, first or second round, maybe even deeper, if it's 6 points per?
Certainly helps on the 6 per, and, I think we can start talking maybe at the back half around 2, but I'm probably still going to be trying to get just my workhorse running backs or, wide receivers with that 150-plus target projection as early as possible. And just in terms of Lamar versus Mahomes specifically, I mean, our PFF projections have them within 8 points of each other. So, if someone wants to rank Mahomes over Lamar, Lamar over Mahomes, you definitely have, a strong rationale for doing so. Personally, I'm on the Lamar train just because this rushing upside it's ridiculous, guys. I mean, his average of 61 rushing yards per game, all-time high for quarterbacks, but that's even misleading because he had those 9 games as a rookie where he was still backing up Flacco. In his starts, Lamar Jackson's averaging 81.6 rushing yards per start. Only Zeke Elliott, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, and Chris Carson have averaged more rushing yards per game over the last 2 years. You are literally almost getting RB1 production, and then anything else Lamar is able to throw is just like icing on the cake. It's the dual threat quarterback is pretty much becoming, and it already is, what, the receiving friendly running back became to PPR leagues, and that's pretty much a fancy cheat code.
Joined by Ian Hartitz from Pro Football Focus at iHartitz on Twitter. Don't you think Lamar, though, is due for some negative touchdown regression in 2020, or is that just because he had such a great year, like it's just expected he's going to take a step back in 2020?
Yeah, he's definitely going to as a passer. I mean, he had a 9% touchdown rate last year, and we've only seen 8 QBs post a rate above 8% since 2000. Among those 8, only Aaron Rodgers even surpassed 6.5% the following year. I mean, this is what happened to Mahomes last season. He was absolutely incredible in 2018. He was still incredible in 2019, but we just have not seen quarterbacks keep this 8 to 9% touchdown rate. So, yes, that's almost certainly going to regress, even if and when Lamar, takes real-life steps forward as a passer. But, again, it just comes down to that insane rushing upside. I mean, this guy has set the NFL record for rush attempts by a quarterback in back-to-back seasons. And even if they take the foot off the gas a little bit, the gap between him and it'd probably be Josh Allen in terms of the next most kind of scrambling heavy quarterback, it's just so wide that, even if Lamar loses a little bit of the rushing upside and his touchdown rate drops, I mean, he's still got a wide gap between him and Mahomes, I feel like.
All right, so let's talk about the top of the draft. Let's start with the running backs. McCaffrey had almost 2,400 total yards and 19 touchdowns last year. All right, but he's got a totally different coaching staff. He's got Matt Rule in there. He's got Joe Brady as his OC. I imagine McCaffrey's still going to go 1-1 in most drafts. How you feel about him and his numbers and his projections?
Yeah, I think he should be going as the 1-1. I mean, look, each of McCaffrey, Saquon, and Zeke are dealing with some coaching staff shakeups. And, CMC, he did just get that big contract. And I think we've seen, enough just overall skill from the guy to, it'd be wild if they're just pulling him off the field for Reggie Bonifant or any of these other guys too often. I mean, full 6 PPR points, more than next highest scoring skill position player last year. And, we do need to be careful when we are projecting guys into a new offense. But in this case, it could even be a positive, and especially just going from Kyle Allen to Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, hey, Allen got thrust in a pretty tough situation, not knowing he was even going to be the starter until the Cam injury really surfaced early on in the season. So, rookie quarterback, things are tough there. But, I mean, Teddy, for all the kind of crap he gets about checking down, I mean, you just pull Teddy's numbers up, and he was a top 15 quarterback in pretty much any efficiency stat last year. So I think he's going to have no issues with getting the ball McCaffrey. Some of the things that Joe Brady was able to do, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at LSU, should be really encouraging for everyone. Just think about the possibilities of McCaffrey in this offense. Honestly, I'd be a little more worried about DJ Moore in the wide receiver pecking order than McCaffrey this year, because I think he's still the engine of that team in general. How the rest of it shakes out is a little more questionable to me.
Ian, a guy who was a league winner for a lot of teams last year, was scooped off the waiver wire. Kenyan Drake, who was miscast in Miami, misused there. Then he goes to Arizona, starts putting up crazy numbers. Do you think that continues in 2020? What does his role look like in that Arizona offense?
One of 10 guys last year just seemed to have that post-Adam Gase breakout, huh? But, No, I'm actually really high on Kenyan Drake. He's my RB6 overall. He's that first guy after, that kind of clear-cut tier of CMC, Saquon, Zeke, Kamara, and Dalvin Cook. And the reason is because when you look at this second tier of running backs, your Derrick Henrys, Miles Sanders, Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones. I mean, all these guys are great running backs, but they all kind of have a second back that's going to be stealing snaps from them, whether it's deserved or not. I mean, Joe Mixon is anyone's idea of a 3-down back, but he only had 2 more targets than Giovanni Bernard all of last season. Kenyan Drake, after those top 5, is truly the last remaining, highly talented back that we should feel somewhat confident about getting that true 3-down workload. Because in Arizona last year, that's what they did. I mean, David Johnson, before he got hurt, weeks 1 through 6, was playing a near every snap load. Chase Edmonds comes in 1 week against the Giants, gets a near every snap load. Kenyan Drake gets acquired. Guys, I mean, his snap rates cleared 65% every single game. He was even touching over 90% by the end of the season. So if they would have added, like, anyone other than a seventh-round pick this offseason, maybe there'd be some more concern. But, I mean, his ceiling is just as this three-down beast in an offense that had the second-best run game, only to the Ravens in most efficiency stats last year. So he was the PPR RB4 from the time he joined the Cardinals to the end of the season. And, you know, again, I just think we need to chase that ceiling. And I know you look at his career, even dating back to his days at Alabama, and he hasn't had the 200 or 250 touches, whatever that specific threshold is. But, you know, we need to focus on the most relevant split. And the most relevant split we have that we should expect moving forward is Drake working as a featured RB1.
Ian, I want to bring it back to the Redskins here for a moment. And I know this wasn't your article on Pro Football Focus. Came out a couple days ago where all of the offensive lines in the NFL were ranked, and Pro Football Focus has the Redskins at 29th.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, guys. They're just, you know, I think they've made a little bit of strides, and they're trying to, but even, I mean, the Dolphins are 32, and they did a pretty good job of, you know, adding some, you know, high round draft picks in the unit and even throughout free agency. It's just one of those things that, you know, if you're ranked very lowly in 2019 and there aren't just any massive changes, you know, to your unit, it's kind of hard to bump them up too much. You know, you hope for continuity, and you hope that maybe a more just team-friendly scheme. And I think one thing we also need to realize is, like, how much quarterback play does have to do with offensive line performance, you know, in terms of getting that ball out and things like that. I'm not putting it all on Haskins. I think he got kind of, you know, a bad rap with, you know, being his first two games, you know, just getting thrown in, you know, thrown in the fire halfway through, and then, you know, kind of having to deal with an offense that was more concerned with kind of feeding Adrian Peterson 20 carries a game than anything else. So I'm, you know, 29th I think is actually fair for right now, but, you know, we could definitely see them approach, you know, average with a nice little leap from Haskins and just a more team-friendly scheme as a whole.
Well, I mean, you just look at the grades that Pro Football Focus gave some of the guys. Morgan Moses with the 65.2, that's 43rd amongst tackles. Wes Schweitzer, who they brought in from Atlanta, was below that at a 56.4 grade. So it is what it is. They don't have a great offensive line. We talked about what's going to happen at running back. But the offensive line, you know, took a hit by trading away Trent Williams. They did draft Sadiq Charles, but it's going to be a problem area.
Yeah, man, look, it's going to come down to, can Dwayne Haskins elevate the rest of the offense? I mean, the fact they didn't feel the need to go high-end quarterback in the draft, I think it shows, you know, Ron Rivera and company have some confidence in him. And, you know, you go back and look. I mean, he had a throw against the Jets last year that didn't even count. I think there was a holding penalty or something. But, you know, dude's throwing a rocket 60 yards downfield and hitting McLaurin in stride off balance. I mean, don't forget, people, this is the guy that set the Big Ten record for touchdowns in a season, breaking Drew Brees' long-time mark. So, yeah, offensive line not great, but you know what? We're seeing the same thing with the Jets. We kind of saw the same thing with the Bills and Josh Allen's rookie year. At some point, great quarterbacks are going to kind of overcome their teammates. Could they make it easier on Dwayne? Absolutely. I really wish they would. I wish there would have been a more concerted effort to even get some, better skill position receiver weapons as well. But, ultimately, whether or not the offensive line can be great, average, or below average, I think it comes down to Haskins.